vacancy. Students.
While I hope our students never have to use the training, actually, we're committed to equipping our students with preparedness and compassion to create a safer, more resilient community while supporting our students' physical and psychological safety and well-being.
In May, Woodward students who have received the training were honored for rendering life-saving aid after a shooting outside the school. The Ohio budget requires schools to allow people to pay cash at events. Sarah Donaldson reports state football playoffs are underway, and lawmakers are looking at the prices students pay at the gate.
The season of Friday Night Lights is in full swing, and House Speaker Jason Stevens says he'd like to tackle student ticket pricing as playoffs kick off.
For $15 for a ticket to a football game, I think is something we need to look at.
According to the Ohio High School Athletic Association's website, student tickets are going for $9 and adult tickets are going for $12 online, with service fees ranging based on the number of tickets being bought. But if you're planning on paying in cash at the door, the price is $15 per game, whether you're a student or not. Stevens doesn't have a particular dollar amount in mind, but says students should be able to afford to see their teams in the playoffs. Sarah Donaldson for the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
Mostly cloudy today, the high 75, it's 58.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Amgen, a biotechnology company working to fight the world's toughest diseases. In a new era of human health, Amgen is dedicated to accelerating the pace of change to push beyond what's known today. From Easy Cater, committed to helping companies from nonprofits to the Fortune 500 manage food for work, with online ordering from restaurants nationwide, budgeting tools, and payment by invoice. EasyCater.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin in Washington, D.C.
Enemy Martinez in Los Angeles, California. The House GOP nominated a fourth person, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, to try and replace Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Tom Emmer of Minnesota dropped out yesterday when it became apparent that he wouldn't have the votes to be elected by the full House. Now, Johnson's bid is expected to be voted on today. However, this all begs the question, how could this Speaker's race affect fundraising for the Republican Party and polling going into next year's election? For more on this, we've called up Stephen Stivers. He's a former Republican congressman from Ohio who also ran the National Republican Congressional Committee, which works to get Republicans elected to the House. So how does all of this, everything we're seeing, shape next year's election possibly?
Well, good morning, Nate. And this speaker is the number one fundraiser for the Republicans in the House. Kevin McCarthy was on pace to raise $500 million, raising record amounts of money, very successful in that part of his job. And Mike Johnson, who might be able to get to 217, we will see, has not been historically a prolific fundraiser. But as they say, politics is a team sport, and hopefully he'll be able to get some help from Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise, who is his fellow Louisianan, and who are both great fundraisers. I'm not sure that this 23-day speaker debacle is going to be the catalyzing event for the 2024 elections.
Why not? Why not?
It hasn't affected anybody.
Is a year too long? Will we forget?
And a year is too long, and something will happen between now and then. Now, it has the potential to impact people's lives because we're 3 weeks from a government shutdown. And my friend Jake Sherman wrote this morning that, you know, if Mike Johnson wins, he's going to go straight from T-ball to the major leagues, sitting down with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and McConnell to negotiate a government funding bill immediately. There's a war in Israel, there's a war in Ukraine, and if we can't do something that the American people think we need to do with regard to those two things, those could be catalyzing events. So, I mean, there's forcing events coming at the House Republicans that are going to force them to come together. I also think there's a lot of folks that are just tired and ready to, you know, the standard goes down a little bit at some point. At the beginning, you know, you want somebody who's perfect, and then after 3 or 4 failed attempts, you're like, you'll take somebody who's kind of acceptable. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, by all accounts, and I served with him, is liked by a lot of people.
If Johnson is elected today, and funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and government funding gets all worked out, are you saying that a year from now everything will be all forgiven?
I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying I don't think the American people are going to say, gee, for 23 days we didn't have a speaker and we're going to vote for a Democrat for the U.S. House because of that in November of 24, a year and 2 weeks from now, when people have had a lot of other things happen. I don't think this is I think it's a circus, but I don't think it's a major event that's going to impact the 2024 elections. But again, it interplays with bigger issues that will or could impact the 24 elections.
All right, Stephen Sivers, a former congressman for Ohio's 15th district. Thank you very much for weighing in here.
Thanks a lot.
41 states are suing Meta for allegedly designing products that addict teens and worsen their mental health.
State prosecutors say some features of Facebook and Instagram violate consumer protection and child safety laws.
NPR tech reporter Bobby Allen is with us now to tell us more about this. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning.
Okay, tell us about the case that the states are making.
Sure, the case boils down to this. State prosecutors say Meta created something they're calling dopamine manipulating features, and they're features everyone who uses social media know very well, right? The algorithms that decide what we see when we log on to Facebook and Instagram, the ability to like a post, being able to scroll endlessly without limits. These features got teens hooked, and the states say Meta knew that teens' self-esteem would suffer once they got addicted to Facebook and Instagram. Now you might be thinking, okay, but how is that against the law? And the states say deliberately designing a product in a way that violates consumer protection laws. Some observers are likening these suits to the lawsuits of the 1990s against big tobacco. I talked to Jean Twenge about this. She's a professor of psychology at San Diego State University, and she says she hopes these lawsuits force Meta to change.
These days, when we see people smoking, they're in the small minority. We think, what are they doing? Maybe we'll think that way in the future about 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds being on social media.
And what's Meta's response?
Yeah, Meta issued a statement saying it shares the concern of state prosecutors. Like them, they want teens on Facebook and Instagram to be safe, but Meta hasn't directly addressed the substance of these suits. Legal experts are expecting Meta to invoke something called Section 230. It sounds very technical, but it's a decades-old federal law that protects tech companies from lawsuits over what users post on their sites. And for years, the law made it nearly impossible to win a successful civil lawsuit against a tech company. But this is starting to change. Increasingly, there is this novel legal tactic that is getting around Section 230. And it involves suing companies over essentially shoddy design, looking at social media almost as a product that should have been recalled because it was harmful. And that is similar to what the states are doing here.
As briefly as you can, say more about what this research does say about social media's effect on teen mental health.
Yeah, Michelle, this has sparked a lot of debate, but I talked to Twenge at San Diego State University about it, since she herself has been a researcher on some really large studies that have looked at teens nationwide. In fact, some of her work is cited by prosecutors in these lawsuits, and she says adolescents are in the midst of a mental health crisis. Consider this fact: between 2011 and 2021, teen depression has doubled. And while there's many ways to explain this, Twenge says the obvious one to her is social media.
No other explanation really fits for why we have a doubling in teen depression at a time when the economy was doing well and crime was going down and almost every other indicator for teens was getting better, but they were spending a lot more time on social media, a lot less time with each other face to face, and less time sleeping.
And now courts will decide whether Meta ignoring similar research constitutes breaking the law or just business as usual.
That is NPR's Bobby Allen. Bobby, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
This is NPR News.
Good morning. It's 8:43. This is 91.7 WVXU. Coming up on the Marketplace Morning Report, the Federal Reserve has unveiled a new rule intended to combat lending discrimination as part of an effort to overhaul the decades-old Community Reinvestment Act. Also, games are becoming a bigger and bigger piece of this economy, and the latest evidence is a study from researchers at Harvard. It finds gamifying employee training can help boost performance. Those stories in 10 minutes on the Marketplace Morning Report on 91.7 WVXU. On US 50 River Road between Hillside Avenue and Fairbanks Avenue, the road's closed because of a wreck. Northbound 7175 approaching Kyle's, a broken down vehicle on the right shoulder. Southbound 7175 approaching 275 Erlanger. There's a broken down vehicle on the right shoulder.
Support comes from 4546 by Men's Apparel High Park Square, offering custom clothing fall fashions and suits and sport coats for footwear, pants, and shirts. 4546findmens.com.
I'm Lucy May. On the next Cincinnati edition, in the battle for Kentucky governor, the candidates are divided over education, COVID policy, and abortion. We'll discuss the issues dividing Governor Andy Beshear and Attorney General Daniel Cameron and what polling shows. Then we'll talk to Cincinnati City Council member Liz Keating about her proposed charter amendment. Today at noon on Cincinnati Edition on 91.7 WVXU.
9 first warning weather. Mostly cloudy, some isolated rain today. The high temperature 75. Mostly cloudy and mild tonight, down to 56, and tomorrow mostly cloudy. There's a slight chance of rain. The high 76. It's 58 in Cincinnati.
Support comes from the UC Center for Business Analytics, presenting data visualization principles and storytelling, October 30th through November 8th. Includes data viz types, strategies, best practices, and how to find and communicate insights from data. No prior experience needed. Information at business.uc.edu/analytics-training.
Good morning. It's 8:45, 59 degrees in Cincinnati. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Marianne Zalesnik. Our feature, OK, I Want to Know, tackles the question that's been running through your mind without a goal line in sight. This week we take a look at elections with WVXU's Bill Reinhardt.
Voters in Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio are casting in-person or absentee ballots for local and statewide issues and offices. But what happens if there's no one to vote for? That's the question Marianne Zalesnik posed.
We see sometimes on the ballot that nobody is running for an office. So my question is, what happens if a seat needs to be filled and no one wants to run?
It happens. In fact, in the November election in Butler County, there will be vacancies on the trustee board for New Miami and the 7 Mile School Board. In Hamilton County, no one is running to be the next treasurer of Addiston or Elmwood Place's clerk. The Hamilton County Board of Elections director says if there isn't a registered candidate, the contest still appears on the ballot. Sherry Poland says there's a note that goes with it.
The phrase that no ballot petition was filed appears in place of the candidate's name.
Poland says if there are registered write-in candidates, there's a blank line printed.
In order for the Board of Elections to count write-in votes, the person who is interested in being a write-in candidate must declare that with the Board of Elections prior to when voting begins.
Without a write-in candidate, what happens to the position? Poland says it depends on what the political subdivision is.
If there is a vacancy in a village clerk or a village treasurer, and that village has a statutory form of government, they do not have their own charter, then that vacancy is filled by appointment by the mayor for the remainder of the term.
For a school district, board members would vote to appoint someone to the empty seat. At the county level, the central committee of the political party of the previous office holder gets to pick the replacement. Poland says cities with a charter will follow the rules of that charter. Ohio law gives the power to the governor to appoint people for federal, state level, and judicial positions, but that doesn't happen very often. The same goes for Kentucky, where Secretary of State Michael Adams says local offices sometimes aren't contested by anybody.
That's routinely a problem. The further down the ballot you go is that cities are at risk of being dissolved administratively if they can't find people to run for these offices. And usually it's nonpartisan, but that actually is kind of the issue, is that the parties are pretty good about recruiting candidates, but when you have nonpartisan offices, there's not the same level of recruitment.
Adams says it's not uncommon in Kentucky school board races. For an unfilled seat, there'll have to be a special election later. He says in other races, Kentucky follows the same policy as Ohio. If someone is registered as a write-in candidate, there's a blank line on the ballot. If no one does, there isn't.
Under our Constitution and statutes, there would be an appointing authority who would fill the vacancy by appointment for a short term until the next election would be held. If it's a constitutional office, the governor would make the appointment. If it's a statutory office, like a city office, a local office, that would be appointed by usually the mayor or the county judge executive.
Indiana has a different method. Wayne County Clerk Deborah Berry says without any candidates, the person already holding the position stays there.
And then once the term starts again, if they do not want to hold that seat, they have to submit a letter of resignation. And then when that resignation is received, we let the party chairman of either of the major parties know that it has to be appointed out of caucus.
Berry says it happens, especially in smaller communities. But she says Wayne County is being proactive. Her office has been reaching out to potential candidates with classes explaining the election process.
This year, we partnered with a private group to hold a training session or an information session because they come and register. It does not mean that they have to run as a candidate in that year. I mean, you know, they might decide, well, I don't know if I want to do that, but over the next 4 years I'd like to learn all there is to learn about it.
Berry says that class led to 2 people filing for office. She says she wants to have another session early next year. If you have a question without an answer in sight, ask OK I Want to Know at WVXU.org. And while there, you can look through previous questions and answers. Bill Reinhardt, 91.7 WVXU.
Support comes from Rheingeist Brewery, located on Elm Street in historic OTR, reminding you that Wednesdays are Beer for Humans Pint Nights. Each month, Rheingeist celebrates 4 local nonprofits brewing positive change. You can grab a pint every Wednesday from 5 to 8 p.m. and support your nonprofit of choice.
Hey, it's Steven Skeet.
And I'm Aisha Roscoe.
That extra car that you're not really using?
That car could be worth hundreds of dollars in support or more as a donation.
Think about it. To donate your car, go to WVXU.org under
o'clock, 74 degrees in Hamilton. Going to the gym. Man, what a workout. Whew. Exhausted.